Well, thank you so much. Thank you, John, and thank you all for being here. Thank you for that very gracious introduction. Tonight, it's my pleasure and honor to introduce to you our featured speaker. With his heavy involvement in scouting, by the way, my introduction of him is a little less than John's introduction to me. I hope you'll forgive me for that. Feel a little badly about that, but only for a minute. With his heavy involvement in scouting throughout his life, including here at Circle 10 Council, our speaker tonight does not need much of an introduction to many of you, but I'm going to give you one anyway. Growing up in a family where his father was a scout executive, he learned all about scouting at an early age and attained the rank of Eagle Scout. Scouting has been such an integral part of his life that as an adult he received the Distinguished Eagle Scout Award, as well as the Silver Beaver and Silver Buffalo Awards for his service as an adult volunteer. If that wasn't sufficient, he also served scouting as the national president of the Boy Scouts of America from 2010 to 2012. I think he would tell you that his time in scouting and achievements made on the way to Eagle were instrumental in helping him develop the skills necessary for achieving the success he did in his career and in public service. In his career in the petroleum industry, which spanned 41 years, he rose through the ranks to become Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of ExxonMobil Corporation, one of the largest and most significant companies in the world. Then, most recently, he continued to serve us in his capacity as our nation's 69th Secretary of State. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in extending a warm welcome to my friend, our friend, and fellow scout, Rex Tillerson.
Well, thank you so much, Trevor, for that very kind introduction, and certainly to you and Jan for all that you have done and continue to do for scouting in this Dallas community. It is a real pleasure to be with all of you this evening and to see so many longtime scouting friends and colleagues who have been great supporters of scouting in our community for so many years. As most of you know, I've been traveled a few miles, and there's been a few twists and turns in my life since I last attended a Circle 10 Friends of Scouting banquet. But Renda and I are now firmly encamped back in our beloved state of Texas, and we're trying to make that transition to retirement. I'm working hard not to get one of those failing grades, and so she keeps giving me D-, so I'll keep trying harder not to slip. But I will confess that in today's domestic and geopolitical climate, the allure to pursue a life of Atlas Shrugged can be quite attractive. But as my longtime mentor, colleague, and friend, former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger told me when I saw him in Washington recently, he said, "I heard you were considering that." And he said, in only the way Henry can say it, "You know, Mr. Secretary, former secretaries of state do not shrug." So if we don't shrug, I'm not sure what we do, but I'm trying to figure it out. With the wide, so I have a few thoughts that I've put together today, and I've been reading in my spare time a number of different books. And much of what I have to share with you tonight, I think, will tie in with why we're all here tonight. I do continue to follow global events with a great deal of interest, as most of the foreign policies that we put in place during my time in Washington continue to play out, from North Korea to Syria and Afghanistan, China and Russia, and the Americas, and many points in between. And I could easily spend the time this evening speaking on just one of those. The external threats to America are serious, and they will require both strategic and tactical actions in coordination with our friends and allies, and a commitment to consistency over the long term if we are to prevail. If we take a short-term approach dictated by election cycles, our adversaries will simply adjust their actions opportunistically to take advantage of our calendar, which is well known to them. For the past century, our leaders and elected officials in Washington followed the principle that all party politics and partisanship stopped at our shores. That as we carried out our foreign affairs and melded our military and diplomatic might to ensure the protection of our freedoms and our national security, the world would know we move with one voice. Our debates and differences would remain inside the House. With the widespread access provided by social media, it is now impossible for the debate and differences not to play out in full view of the world, and most importantly, our allies and our adversaries. And as such, it invites their efforts through these same devices and tools to participate in those debates, usually in very unwanted ways. That is why, in my view, if we are unable to restore civility and truth to our internal debates, the growing political polarization will be exploited by our adversaries. And this, in fact, may be the greatest threat to national security and our republic. How did our nation of fellow Americans become so polarized? And how do we return to civility and respectfulness towards one another? When the founders of our nation completed their work on the 4200 document that is our Constitution, they put in place the legal foundation for the greatest experiment the world had ever seen or has ever seen since. The first attempt by a nation at self-government. As the delegates were leaving Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Benjamin Franklin was stopped by a woman and asked, "Well, doctor, what is it? A republic or a monarchy?" To which Franklin replied, "A republic, madam, if you can keep it." His response was an acknowledgement that what the founders had created, a form of self-governance, having never been tried before, would be fragile and risky. How could people who came from a continent of monarchies possibly govern themselves? This was liberty. The government of we the people requires certain things of its citizens if we are to keep it. In his book, entitled "If You Can Keep It," author Max Metaxas recounts a segment of Martin Luther King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech. King said the Constitution and Declaration of Independence before it constitute a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. It was a promise that was not to be fulfilled instantly. It is a promise that is being fulfilled and that must keep on being fulfilled by we the people. If we don't do our duty toward keeping that promise, our nation will soon cease to exist in any real sense. The American idea will simply become a piece of geography on a map whose citizens are defined by the boundaries of the piece of dirt called America, no longer defined as a people joined together by a commitment to the promise of the American idea. Even when our national unity has been put to the most severe test in our great Civil War, our leaders were able to call upon the better angels of our nature, reminding us we are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection for one another. Can we not also today call upon the better angels of our nature to heal this polarization in our nation? It is up to us to deliver on this same promise to the next generation. But over the past few decades, there has been a growing disconnection between our people and their country and the American idea. And as such, that disconnection gap only grows with each subsequent generation. What is it Franklin warned we had to keep? The duty and obligations of each American to deliver on the promise of the rarest of ideas. But if the American people do not know what the idea is, how do they deliver on it? How do we ensure the future generations know what they are to keep? Where are they learning it today? Alex de Tocqueville wrote, "Liberty cannot be established without morality, nor without faith." It was the founders' strongly held belief that a people with strong moral beliefs, shaped by their religious convictions, would demand the same of their leaders. That when people chose their leaders, they would look beyond their own personal needs or wants to deliver on the promise of one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The government cannot make good people. People are good because of their moral beliefs, their religious foundations, and their belief in a higher being. The idea that we, the people, not only want but require servant leaders is fundamental to the survival of the Republic. Ronald Reagan is said to have kept a plaque on his desk that said, "There's no limit to what a man can do or where he can go if he does not mind who gets the credit." This notion that we want servant leaders is from a recognition that we as a nation have been made great because we are a servant nation to others. We as a nation have come to the aid and service of others to strike down tyranny in the great wars and the conflicts since, and to protect the vulnerable. We do these things because we are a nation of good people. We recognize our moral responsibilities and we answer the call to fulfill our duty to others. It is only by fulfilling our duty to others that we strengthen our friendships and alliances that are vital to our own national security interest. Fulfilling our duties to others means we are able to fulfill our duties to ourselves and future generations. As stewards of this American idea of liberty through self-government, we must hold ourselves accountable by doing our duty in the selection of our leaders and by educating and preparing future generations as to the moral standard by which we can keep the Republic created by our founders. So God created a scout. God created a scout. That's where they will learn it. I know of no better organization to prepare future generations to make the ethical, moral decisions than Scouting. Scouting uses words that are not found commonly in the lexicon of 7 to 18-year-olds. Honor, duty. But these are the very essence of what the founders of our nation had in mind when they created our nation and its form of self-governance. My own scouting experience, and Trevor described some of it to you, was foundational to what I am today. I am still a Boy Scout. I will always be a Boy Scout. My Boy Scout Troop 20 in Stillwater, Oklahoma, where I earned both my God and Country Award and my Eagle, celebrated its 100th anniversary last fall. I had a marvelous scoutmaster, L.E. Tinker, Tink. He was a retired merchant marine and a painter of houses, not of art. He would carry all of our camping equipment for our weekend campouts in his big paint van with all of his tarps, with all of the paint buckets and all of the brushes. But Tink was the epitome of the volunteer scout. He gave everything, every moment of his time that he was not painting and earning a living to us, to the boys in his care. And I grew up understanding through his counsel and his leadership and from my fellow scouts, not just how to recall the oath, but to internalize what those words meant. The 3 pillars of the Scout Oath, which begins with "on my honor," words that few young people utter today, "on my honor," that I will meet my duty to God and country, the very essence of the founders' principles on which our nation is built, the connection of God and country, that our founders relied upon the goodness of the American people, which was grounded in their religious beliefs, not in the form of government, but was grounded. And that's why the goodness of these people would select leaders who worked on the broader goodness of the nation and not on their own self-interest or on the self-interest of any individual citizen. Duty to God and country, inextricably linked. If we ever lose God and that connection to our country, then we have lost the republic. Duty to God and country. Duty to others, the second pillar of the Scout Oath. Servant leadership. Duty to others. Again, part of the foundational moral guidance of the founding of this country. And finally, duty to ourself. We have a responsibility to ourself in order to meet our duty to God and country and our duty to others. And then the 12 points of the Scout Law: trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, reverent. The Scout Oath and the Scout Law are bookended by God. Duty to God, and a Scout is reverent. The basis of our moral compass is that recognition of a higher being in our life. The basis of this nation is a recognition of a higher being in the moral compass of its citizens. The slogan, "Do a good turn daily." The goodness of the American people. Servant leadership, service to others. The motto, "Be prepared." Prepared to do your duty as an American, to answer the retort of Benjamin Franklin, "A republic if you can keep it." I know of no other youth-serving organization anywhere that teaches all of these principles and that then is embodied in its members and becomes part of their DNA and who they are and who they will be for the rest of their lives. Yes, there are many other activities competing for our young people's time. I know, I have 5 grandchildren. Soccer, t-ball, basketball, swim team. And yes, many of these organizations have nice codes of conduct and pledges to be sportsmanship and commitment. But I know that very, very few children in those programs could even recite those codes to you. Every Boy Scout can recite that oath to you, not just today, but tomorrow, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, they will still be reciting that oath because it's part of their DNA now. Scouting produces good citizens prepared to make ethical, moral decisions and to expect the same of others. As Will Rogers, the vaudevillian showman and political satirist, famously said, "There's only one problem with the Boy Scouts of America. There's not enough of them." How true it is today. That's why it is so important that you are here tonight to support this organization, the only youth-serving organization I can name to you that will address Benjamin Franklin's challenge if we can keep it. It involves knowing what citizenship means, what a responsibility of a citizen is, and then not just knowing it, but acting upon it. And I think the best measure for the individual is a saying which was passed on to me by a scoutmaster in New Mexico, that the boy I was would be proud of the man I have become. The boy I was would be proud of the man I have become. That's what scouting produces. Men that will make you proud. And now it will be producing women that will make you proud. So thank all of you for being here tonight. Thank you for what you do for scouting. God bless you. God bless the Boy Scouts of America. God bless the United States of America.